Hi, I'm Alyssa Rosenberg. I'm the host of Critic Proof on Blogging Heads, and I'm the culture blogger on Think Progress and a columnist for Slate and The Atlantic. And I am here today with one of my favorite people to talk to, the fabulous June Thomas. June?
Hey, nice to be doing this with you, Alyssa. Thanks for asking.
Well, thanks for joining me. June and I got into a little bit of a disagreement last week over Ryan Murphy's NBC sitcom, The New Normal, specifically over the way it treats lesbian characters, or I guess I should say lesbians passing through the frame, because there aren't any actual lesbian characters on the show yet.
Exactly.
But, you know, I wanted to talk both about sort of that show in particular and some of the representations of lesbians we're getting elsewhere on television, either as characters who are sort of at the center of the frame or are supporting characters in larger shows where I actually think some of the more kind of innovative work is taking place.
I agree.
And June, I was wondering if you wanted to talk a little bit about your reaction to The New Normal, which is about two gay men who decide to have a child with the help of a surrogate. First, because I think you liked it more than I did, and I would be curious to see if you can convince me.
Yeah, I do feel very self-conscious about, I seem to have found myself in the role of like the major advocate for the show or a major advocate for the show. And that doesn't mean that I don't have some problems with it, but I just, it kind of spoke to me, and I recognized many of the characters. So some of the issues that people have had are with the hate speech that the Nana character played really very in a quite understated way by Ellen Barkin, who is kind of in the role of, Alf Garnett or Archie Bunker. She's a bigot, and, characters just say, you're a bigot. And, she is an equal opportunity hater, including she makes comments about gay people, both gay people who, as you say, are actually present and whose actors, get name checked in the TiVo guide, but also in characters who just are passing through. We did see a lesbian couple in the first episode, in actually one of the first scenes, and they were played by real lesbians, which feels like something of an achievement. And it was standard stuff, ugly men, not particularly funny, but, Nana's never funny, and it might be a bit of a problem if she was, don't you think?
That's an interesting question, right? Because I think the thing that has always been the most interesting to me about The New Normal is that it's a show where, let me put it this way. Seeing a cute young gay couple, I don't think is that much of an innovation. Having a character who is bigoted and mean and who causes real harm to herself and others because she's this rigid thinker does actually strike me as kind of an interesting, sometimes difficult thing. I mean, Nana is not someone who, had sort of casually formed prejudices and who, through contact with saintly, wonderful gay people, has suddenly reformed and become a nicer person. She's really stuck. This is what she believes, and this is maybe always going to be who she is. And we see that she's lived this sort of crabbed life as a result.
Right.
And so and she hurts other people's feelings, there's real harm there. And I don't know how much of that is intentional, because I never know how much of the good parts of Ryan Murphy shows are accidental or how much they're intentional. But I do think that is an interesting thing about the show.
Yeah, I agree. It makes you uncomfortable to be watching, which, I don't know. I mean, there's that whole theory of eliciting feelings is always good. I'm not sure that that's true, but it's something. But I guess where we differ is that I do see some potential for change. I mean, it's this problem that we're all familiar with, and that especially at this point in the TV season, we have to say over and over that we just haven't seen that much.
Yeah.
We've now seen 3 episodes, which, is a lot more than we've seen in most of the shows. But, they have to establish the characters or the stereotypes. And so, if she is going to change, she can't have changed yet. And, yes, in the 3rd episode, which we're taping this on Thursday, the 19th of September, and yesterday was the 3rd episode. And there was a slight moment. We've had a few moments. Yesterday, she and Brian, one of the gay men, said the same thing together. At the same time.
We should be clear that they made the same racist joke about Chinese
food
together.
That's right. Yes, indeed they did.
So, bonding through bigotry.
Yeah, exactly. And so the thing which definitely does complicate matters, because you kind of you have this feeling that, the backstory that I have created for her, which may well be entirely my own invention, is that she has been very damaged, that she was, again, I wrote this piece or post that was about how the real sort of point of the new normal is to celebrate specialness. And, in the backstory that I've created with Nana, she was special. She was flying her freak flag, and then, she was hurt. And the way that she has dealt with that hurt is by hurting other people. Because you're right, she hurts people. Her words really land. Her punches land. So that is my hope for the show, that she will, that eventually, and, it's got to be slowly, that she will eventually kind of, reveal what it was that's caused her to act like this, and then to change her behavior. But, it's also, I also feel very conflicted about this whole thing. Believe me, I understand Ryan Murphy. I've got my own concerns. But, as I know, and always spell out when you write about the show, it's not just him. Ali Adler, a lesbian, is the co-creator, and a mom too, because motherhood and fatherhood are also a big theme of the show, is a co-creator. There's at least one lesbian on the writing staff. So it's not just him. However, there are already a lot of the Ryan Murphy tropes in play. So, stipulated, but I'm a little more optimistic, I guess. If it lasts, in the first 3 episodes, the ratings haven't been particularly impressive, and they're going down.
Yeah, I guess what kind of rubbed me the wrong way about the lesbian jokes in the show that we disagreed on is that in both, sort of this show and in Glee, which has had more time and has had a chance to develop its lesbian characters a little bit more, this is told from a world where, and from sort of the perspective of white, upwardly mobile gay men, and the jokes about lesbians being boring and mannish and fat all sort of landed before there was anyone there to, not necessarily sort of counteract that stereotype, but to be a person. And I think that I might have minded less if the jokes were less boring. The only way they could have been more cliche is if there was a U-Haul in the second date truck, right? Joke, right? Alice, I feel like there should be a Bechdel test, not just for 2 women who talk to each other about something other than a man, but it's do your lesbian jokes date from 1985? If so, refresh your course time.
Right, but they're playing on the stereotypes, and those are the stereotypes. I'm not defending the jokes, because I agree they were not funny and they were cliche, but, the cliches are the cliches. You can't really just whip one up for the sake of a joke. And the ultimately the reason, again, just my mitigated optimism. So
don't worry, I'm not going to put you on the hook for defending.
No, I know.
I promise.
So, as you said, the jokes made by the hip gay men made it seem that the lesbians were less cool, older, more boring. But the lesbians, now, not the ones that Brian was talking about, which were entirely fictional and purely in his mind, but the first lesbians that we saw in the first episode were a couple who had a baby. And that's the thing that they want. They are hip and young and fashionable and beautiful, and they don't have the thing that they really want. So to me, that's stretching, I know, because that's not what he was talking about, but that image was still in my mind that, these guys who, they're not the paragon because there's still something very deep and profound that they want. And so it's not, if they're lashing out, it's not because their life is perfection, because clearly it isn't. So that's my mitigation.
Sure. And I mean, Murphy and Ali Adler, his co-creator, have promised to add, I think, as Murphy put it on Twitter, an eloquent lesbian couple to the show.
Right.
Which,
also
I hope,
white and pretty.
Yeah, which I hope happens, if only because, I mean, and this may be sort of a segue to the next show we plan to talk about, but it would be nice if that couple is friends with Brian and David and has an actual relationship, because I think one of the things that's really striking about, the white, upwardly mobile gay men we see on television is that we rarely see them in the context of a larger gay community. They're surrounded often by straight people, partners. CBS's new show about sort of based on a 1995 show.
Right. And how does it show?
Is about a gay man and a straight man who are best friends, and their relationship gets sort of up in the air when the straight man gets engaged. And, it's not, I think it's really good and important, and I understand why for heterosexual audiences, seeing gay people in the context of straight people may be, I think, easier to digest. If we're operating in a television atmosphere, as I think we are, where people who are in the majority are not really asked or expected to immerse themselves in worlds that don't have good representations of themselves. But It would be nice to see some gay men and lesbians who get to be friends on television. That would be nice.
I agree completely. And recently I wrote a piece, in June, of course, where everything about gay people must appear, about what logo, a gay channel how they're transforming. And one of the ways they're transforming is having less about gay people, or rather kind of placing gay people in the wider world, which is to say the straight world. And part of it, you're absolutely right. The reasons that you stated are, I believe, the main reason. But, the world is mainstreaming. Now gay people can be relatively open in many places. And so, as I say, I think your reason is the real reason, but it's also a reflection of what's happening in the world. Many gay people, yes, socialize with gay people, but they move in a straight world. Very few of us these days work and socialize in an entirely gay world. So I think, acknowledging mainstreaming is not unreasonable in itself, but yeah.
Sure. I just think that the mainstream also doesn't mean that there's, one gay person in a social clique that's otherwise all straight people. Mainstream in some of the environments where these shows are set mean more broadly mixed groups overall. But yeah, no,
I think though that sorry to talk over you, and since I think Partners is just a very bad show, a very dated show, and which in itself has some really horrible lesbian jokes in it, when they didn't even bother to hire people just to walk across the set.
Invisible magic lesbians, yeah.
Exactly. That we're not going to find anything positive to say about that show, but one show that I love, and I know that you wrote about very positively this week, is Lost Girl, which I think, even though it has, one, maybe two gay people, lesbian people, but is it integrated in a way that still respects people's identities? You know, the people who are gay or straight or bi are allowed to be themselves. They're not being asked to, hide their authentic selves, to quote Oprah, when they are mixing. And also that there's this feeling from most of them that they are in a group and that they're being with people who aren't exactly like them because of another commonality, which is their status as phase, the non-human people, or I don't know if people is the right word, but the non-humans who...
Entities, beings.
Yes. So I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, I really, I'm working on a larger piece about this right now, and the sort of emergence of stories about characters who are gay, but where the action, gay or bisexual, but where the action and sort of the tragedies in their stories aren't driven by their sexual orientation. And I think Lost Girl is a really interesting example of this, because, you know, Beau, the main character, who is a bisexual succubus, I sort of wonder if that's an oxymoron, but, you know, the show has not entirely made that clear. You know, her personal life is super tumultuous. She, you know, starts out dating this, I guess he's kind of a werewolf, who gives up his ability to love her, in order to save her in a big climactic battle. She has a relationship with this beautiful, like, relatively feminine lesbian doctor who's human, who betrays her, but not because she's, like, a sneaky lesbian or, like, a fake bisexual, but because, you know, she's enmeshed in these political loyalties, and her girlfriend is held captive by this entity who has sent her in to spy on Beau. You know, there are gay relationships in the show that are tragic, but tragic for reasons that have nothing to do with internalized homophobia or external pressure or homophobic violence. And it's such a relief, right? I mean, you know, the only way there's something extremely limiting about a world where the only heroism available to gay people is overcoming homophobia, and where the only sort of grand emotional tragedy can come through homophobia. These are sort of liberation stories that are actually extremely restricting, that end up sort of keeping gay people in the same tragic tranche. And to have Lost Girl, to have Lost Girl give Beau more humanity than that, I guess, give her more fairiness than that, whatever the technical term is such a relief to me.
Right. No, we're on exactly the same page. I mean, I think it's shocking how wonderful that feels to watch. I mean, I have a zero, not because of any beliefs or like, I don't watch this, I don't like this. I just have never liked anything with a supernatural element. It's just not my thing. It just turns me off somehow. And I love the show, and it's pure pleasure because for exactly the reason you just stated so well, and also just because the desire feels believable, but not, you know, there to, you know, win over viewers in a sort of sneaky, sordid way. And also, I mean, they also do this thing where they bring on characters who, minor characters who, again, are not in trouble because of their sexuality. But, for example, there's also a procedural element, which I suppose may be why I like it. But in one of the mysteries of the week, a guy came, it was an old friend of Tric's who we just learned, I won't give the spoiler, we just learned something very interesting about Tric, but he's a leader in the community and the owner of the place where the Fae mix and relax. So basically he's the gay bar owner in another context.
Yeah.
But it was a friend of his, an old friend of his, and in the case of the Fae, an old friend can be someone that you've known for, 500 years. Yeah. And his husband was killed, and he wanted the body back. And it was such a nothing role. He was on screen for about 10 minutes, but it was, it was the ability to show a love, a deep, enduring love that was, and his grief was believable. And but as you say, it wasn't because of homophobia. It was, as I don't actually remember the way that the mystery worked out, but it wasn't that. And just kind of the relief that I felt when that was not the problem was, immense. And that's kind of crazy how that feeling should, that I should still have feelings like that in 2012. And I also love the lack of shame on the show. That's another thing. It's not that shame should be displaced or, that there's ever a feeling of, that the other shoe hasn't dropped yet or comeuppance will be around the corner. There's no shame about consensual sex in this show.
Right.
And that, I think, also is a fantastic thing to see and weirdly rare on television.
Well, I wanted to get at sort of two things that you brought up. And the first was that story where, Trix has this friend who's a widower. And, I've been watching Go On, the Matthew Perry sitcom that's airing on NBC, where Perry plays a widower who's a member of a support group. And the group contains probably my favorite new character of the season, this woman Anne, played by the wonderful character actress Julie White, who does things like star in Transformers movies to pay all the bills. I really hope she got...
And she's a wonderful Broadway actress too, yeah.
Right. I really hope she got like a Maserati out of Michael Bay, because she's loaned out a lot of credibility to him. But, so Anne is a widow with anger issues, and, very casually, again, there's just absolutely nothing didactic about this.
Right.
She's a widow because she lost her wife, and she lost her wife because her wife was careless about taking her heart disease medication. It's super straightforward. It's this dumb little thing, but it's maybe the most matter-of-fact gay character we've ever had on network television. We're 3 episodes in, and there hasn't been a story about her being a lesbian. The story is about her being a widow and being sort of angry and cranky and sort of mean to people. I just love her for that. And the character was also initially written straight. Right. And then the creators of the show realized they already had another widow who was married to a man in the group. And were like, we should tweak this a little bit. Which I think is interesting.
Because Julie White has played lesbian before, and as far as I'm aware, she herself is heterosexual, and I don't know, but she's very good at being, I don't know, in this case she's angry, she's mad at the world, but she's often quite hard. She's good at shouting and being sarcastic, so I don't know if that's why she often gets those shouty roles, but I don't know why she, I think there may be some internalized homophobia in the casting directors in some way, but I agree, it's a very... it feels like there's some significance to that casting.
Yeah. Well, and just to
it's
the utter matter. Sorry.
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
It reminds me though of, I was just looking just randomly the other day at a show from 1982, Love Sydney, that had from The Odd Couple, Felix Unger. I'm afraid the actor's name is Tony Randall, who, his real life sexuality is confusing, but he played a gay man in 1982, and apparently, I haven't seen the show, but in the pilot, apparently it was clear that he was gay, but then it was just never mentioned, and he was, a single man, and it was 1982, but I almost wonder if we have a little bit come full circle, because I find a great deal of positivity in Julie White's character in Go On, but it also feels weird to be celebrating the matter-of-factness of gayness. It's great that it's matter-of-fact gayness, but that can kind of border in or bleed into invisible gayness or non-specific gayness, which I don't think is the case in this particular part, but it is funny how close those two things can be.
Well, it's almost as if, we had some characters like that one that you mentioned who were sort of matter of fact as a way to not have to deal with either homosexuality or homophobia, then had a wave of shows that were very much about addressing both, the gay people, they exist, and heterosexual people's feelings about that. And maybe
Right.
now we're at a point where characters can be both matter-of-fact and present, because
Yeah.
shows don't have to either directly confront viewers' homophobia or give them a cookie for liking gay characters.
That's right. It's always interesting to me too that many of the shows that we're talking about are comedies. Glee theoretically is also a comedy because I grew up in England, and in England there's this long tradition of effeminate gay men, or rather comedians who take on the persona of an effeminate gay man. As I understand it, in real life they aren't always actually gay, but they, that's their shtick, that they're incredibly effeminate, and their catchphrases are always, some incredibly Nelly thing.
Yeah.
And I think, and this is not sort of high-end comedy. This is like retail television, working class, comedy. And I think that there's this element of they're, laughing at gays, which I hope that the men who would succeed in that particular role, I hope most of them, must have, I don't think they would have succeeded if they weren't doing it in a loving way. But, laughing at people can be a way of showing affection. I mean, it can be other things too. That, some of the, in the new normal, Brian he's pretty effeminate, and he's also pretty funny. And I think, and Andrew Rannells, who plays Brian, is a marvelous actor and is a gay man himself. And I think that, again, he does it with enough love that it's okay to laugh at him because he's laughing too. But there's something in that role, or in that particular type of comedic figure that is tricky. I wonder if straight people think, is it really okay for me to laugh at this? And I don't know. To me, the new normal, one of the reasons I like it, feels like a very gay show. The humor feels like the kind of stuff that you would get in a gay comedy show. But I wonder if there's an awkwardness for straight people about, like, can I really laugh at this?
Well, and it's also, I mean, to go back to the question of sort of straight men or straight people playing gay people, one of the things that's interesting about this year on television is that, we have Julie White playing a lesbian. We have Justin Bartha, who is a straight man, who has said that he plays Brian's partner, David, on The New Normal. And Bartha has said that he was specifically looking to play a gay character. And then you have Brandon Routh on Partners, who plays Michael Urie's boyfriend. And Routh is a straight guy who has... who played a gay porn star in Zack and Miri Make a Porno, and has sort of, part of the way that he has played with his image as this sort of incredibly good-looking heterosexual hunk of beef, is to play these sort of sweet, understated gay men. Which, and I don't, I'm not sure if I have a conclusion there yet about what it means. Obviously Brokeback Mountain was, a way to gain prestige by having straight people play gay and tragic. But, clearly, I wonder if playing gay for some of these guys is just a way to play a different kind of masculinity than is typically written for straight male characters.
Yeah. Well, I really like the way that Justin Bartha is playing David in The New Normal. I mean, there is this sense of he's a guy who is straight in the way he socializes, in his interests. He just likes to have dude-on-dude sex. And I love that idea too. That there isn't one kind of gay guy, which, is to state the most obvious fact in the world, and yet not always necessarily obvious from watching television.
Yeah. No. Well, and speaking of different kinds of gay men, can we talk about the LA complex, to which I am...
Please, let's.
Can we talk about the LA complex, to which I am hopelessly addicted? Addicted.
Me too. Love that show.
I spent 2 hours on GChat today talking to one of my best friends about Keldrick King, a character on the show played by the wonderful, wonderful Andra Fuller, who is effectively, although increasingly less so, closeted gay rapper. And it gets back to something that we talked about earlier with Lost Girl, is the LA Complex is one of the only shows that has gay people in them, that shows them having sex and makes it really hot. I mean, we have so many sort of sexually denatured gay couples on television, Mitch and Cam on Modern Family being, I think, the worst offenders. But, I mean, and Andre Fuller is straight and is, laying down some incredibly hot sex scenes. And, of course, here I am blushing on camera. But that's been very striking to me about that show. It's just like, the sex looks fun. Unlike most TV or pop culture generally.
I agree completely, and I think we should note two things that those shows have in common, along with another show that has had a long and very good record of dealing with gay characters, which is Degrassi, which I'm currently forgetting what Degrassi is currently called, even though I watch it.
Degrassi 4.0, Degrassi the Next Generation, Degrassi Back to the Future.
Exactly. Because they're Canadian. I mean, not because they're Canadian, but they are Canadian. I mean, one of the reasons... It's funny because New Girl, which is Canadian, but sort of plays its Canuckness very... its setting is extremely generic. It's simply a North American city that they live in. But, when the guy came and talked about his husband in Canada, that wouldn't be weird, unlike, 43 states of the USA. But, I think, and both Degrassi and the LA Complex come from the same production company. So, there's kind of more of a history there, which feels weird to say, but, if we're going to hold Ryan Murphy responsible for some of his earlier shows, let's also do that for the folks behind the LA Complex. But I agree, it's super hot and it's fantastic, and that the Cal storyline, first with Tariq, who was the first guy that he kissed on the show, and who he then ended up beating to a pulp in a really horrific scene. The other thing that the LA Complex has in common with Degrassi is, I think, its didacticism. I mean, that's one of the shows where I am pretty sure that, the other shoe will always drop. There will always be consequences that are relatively predictable. Which is not to say that the show's predictable. It's not. I love that I can still be surprised by television, and the LA Complex does serve up surprises every week. But generally speaking, bad stuff is punished and good stuff is rewarded. So I don't know quite what's going to happen, but that does tend to happen on those epitome shows.
And I felt watching the LA Complex for Caldrick in particular has been interesting to me, because I am, to a certain extent, really exhausted by, as we talked about earlier today, gay love stories that are tragic for gay reasons, for internalized homophobia, etc.
Right.
And to a certain extent, Cal and Tariq's relationship fell squarely into that trap. It was, oh great, yet another story about internalized homophobia ending in violence. Right. But at the same time, talking to some of my friends who are Black gay men, they've said that as a story about, Caldrick's father was sort of very rough on him in terms of trying to make him a man, not necessarily trying to make him straight, but, in terms of Cal taking these injunctions about masculinity and whether they were intended that way or not, using them to sort of reinforce and fuel his self-hatred. They've said that that's been very powerful to them. And, I think it's made me watch the show somewhat more appreciatively, because, look, representations of both lesbians and gay people of color are so far behind where depictions of white upwardly mobile gay men are. And in a way, I think the depictions of some of those characters are still, at least on mainstream television, in the early stage of their creative cycles. People are still working through the stereotypes to real life.
Yep. Yeah, that's very true, and I wish we could disagree more. Let's gin up some disagreements. But
how do we feel
I
about
also
the real
think
L word?
don't go there. But also, I think it doesn't hurt for I was going to say for the wide audience that the LA complex attract, because sadly, and for reasons that I cannot comprehend, it is, an utter failure with audiences.
It's mysterious,
no
right? It's this great, gritty little show. There's a lot of sex. There's a lot of, drama. As an entertainment industry story, it's much more interesting than, say, Entourage. And yet nobody's watching it. Nobody.
Exactly.
A grand total of nobody. It's very sad.
Yeah, 250,000, 600,000, I don't know, whatever, terrible. Yeah, just before I'll finish my point first and then I'll go back to that. For a mainstream program to show the damage that living in the closet can do to both the people who are in there, Caldrick, and to the people who love them, or say they love them, and force a certain, try and keep them in a particular straitjacket. That is very powerful. So, I do give it points for that, but I kind of wish that it's also a little bit conflicted. But as you mentioned, the sort of the entertainment world sort of narrative of the LA complex. When it first started, I was also at the time, very much into Girls, which I love, but it struck me as almost the sort of the West Coast counterpart to Girls, in that Girls is about people who want to, make it in a kind of creative industry. They want to be writers. They want to be galleristas. They want to work in the world. They want to express themselves somehow. And they don't really know how to do it. There doesn't seem to be a clear path, or they're a little embarrassed to take the path that they think might be the way to, become a writer or whatever it is they want to do. Whereas in the LA complex, which, again, is a Canadian story, but still it does, from what I gather, people who live in LA and have gone to LA for that reason agree that it's relatively accurate. There's kind of a clearer way to make it. You want to be in TV, you want to be in a writer's room. You go, be a writer's assistant. And if you want to be a dancer, you go on these auditions. Now, okay, auditions, everybody knows. Everybody has to do that in every city. But, in the first series, there was a dance character who was a dancer and a good dancer and worked really hard. And it was about, what the differentiator is between, is it just hard work? Is it talent? Is it making connections? It really is, that part of it has faded just a little bit of late, but to me, that was one of the most fascinating aspects to the show.
Well, and one of the things that ties Girls back to the rest of our conversation is Andrew Rannells is in Girls as well, playing the main character, Hannah Hovarth's former college boyfriend, who, when we first see him, they're having a huge fight, both about whether his character gave her HPV, and it ends with him telling her, "Nice to see you, your dad is gay." And that character, whose name is escaping me at the moment,
Elijah?
Yes, Elijah. So one of the things that struck me about Elijah that is different and I think sort of more daring than either Partners or The New Normal is that his character is this big running joke about serial monogamy and gay men, because he's always in and out of these relationships with older men, and they have these extravagant plans to settle down, and then they always crash and burn. And the first season of Girls ends with him, moving in with Hannah, whose best friend, Marnie, has just moved out of their apartment, kind of because it seems like he's going to break up with his boyfriend. And I thought that was a very, if you want to talk about a new normal for gay men, that's actually more of a frontier than anything Ryan Murphy thinks he's peddling.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's and I don't know if that is the step that you can't take in a mainstream network show, because obviously on Glee the gays all, partnered up, the gays and the lesbians, all the homosexuals, all partnered up, the minute they came out, or about 30 seconds before.
It's also high school. I mean, that's the vision of... That's the vision of a sort of a successful sexual and romantic life when you're 16, is that there's somebody there, and they don't go away. The characters aren't old enough to, have the availability of sort of urban gay communities. I will be interested to see what happens to Kurt and Blaine now that Kurt has moved to New York, and presumably is going to get laid more. One would think, possibly.
I do hope so, although... Well, I don't know. I do hope so, but then I feel like I'm sabotaging whatever the portmanteau name is for
clean.
So that just doesn't work.
So terrible. I mean, it's clean or blurt. Those are our options.
Oh, I hope it's blurt. Blurt. Let's make it blurt.
Terrible.
Oh,
I can't believe I'm even still watching Glee, which I quit in a rage last season, and now I'm totally sucked back into because I'm the world's worst person.
All you people who announce that you're giving up Glee, you're like those football fans who say that they're giving up football. I believe that they and you are sincere in your objections to either the body damaging sport that is American football, or the offensive.
The soul-damaging sport that is Ryan Murphy's imagination.
Right, but at the same time, you can't quite stay away.
I just don't know how to quit you. I did quit for 5 whole episodes last season. I didn't watch any of the run-up to the finale. I was very good.
But then you missed Nationals.
Yeah, I don't care about Nationals.
Yeah.
I do, however, really like that Unique, the transgendered singer we met last season, has joined the McKinley High Glee Club. I think Unique is fabulous. And also just sort of textured and, upping the ante a little bit for the show. And not that I trust them to handle anything responsibly, but, for the 1 hour of television we've seen, it's been a good thing for the Glee Club, I think.
Yes, I agree.
We can take bets on Unique crashing and burning. We've got a couple more minutes, and I wanted to ask you about what, in a way, is the most sort of generic old school show this season, which is Chicago Fire, Dick Wolf's triumphant return to NBC post Law and Order, which for me was an interesting barometer because we find out that in one of the female paramedic characters is a lesbian in the first episode. And again, like with Julie White in Go On, it's done in a really sort of matter-of-fact way, which is kind of a change considering that the previous, Dick Wolf gay character is like, it's a big secret, and then it's revealed in a matter-of-fact way and never addressed again. So,
no. I'm a great lover of Law and Order. It might be my favorite show of all time. I've seen all those episodes 100 times, and after the reveal, the ridiculous, is it because I'm gay? Afterward, when I rewatched the episodes in which, is it Sutherland? I think it's Sabrina Sutherland.
Sabrina Sutherland. All those great alliterative names.
Yes. I rewatched all of her shows, and there's never any indication, so that was bullshit. That was retconning of the most ridiculous time.
Retcon tokenism.
Yes. But anyway, I'm sorry, I totally interrupted you.
No, but do you think it's a sign that, if even like Dick Wolf, who has never known, has never had sort of a real gay character in a show, if even he feels obliged to have a gay character for sake of, fully rounding out the diversity of this firehouse, does that signal anything? Is that a good barometer of where the baseline is now?
Well, I don't know. I mean, it does. It's funny because, as I say, I love Law and Order, which I guess means that I love Dick Wolf. And I'm a little unimpressed by this show, partly, I think, because it is almost like the bizarro Law and Order. It's firemen instead of cops. where it's all personality instead of no personality. It's
Rahm Emanuel instead of Mayor Giuliani.
Exactly. But, so I think, as it is, it's probably, the ultimate matter of factness. But also, part of me sort of thinks, well, it's a show set in a firehouse, and is EMT the right description of that character? So, and if you're talking about EMTs and female firefighters, you have to have a lesbian. If you're going to have women, you have to have a lesbian. Which actually, I'm going to just backtrack a little bit and just recall that actually in Law and Order, in the sadly mistreated Law and Order Los Angeles, there was a lesbian character who was kind of forced out of the closet. So it was traumatic for her. That's because that's always been the case if you're going to have things happening in a police station and have women, you're also going to need to have lesbians, but that's typically not been something that TV creators have done. So, and next we're going to, one of my least favorite shows of the season is Animal Practice, and the only other place that I can think of that probably has more lesbians in the workplace than fire stations and police stations are veterinarians' offices, and I don't believe there are any lesbians in Animal Practice.
There is a sassy black lady, though. There is a sassy black lady and a sexually repressed Asian man. Got that going for it. So.
That Asian man character is the singular most offensive racial stereotype of the season. I mean, Ryan Murphy has never sunk that low, I don't think. Well, okay, maybe that's going too far, but...
We may not want to go there. I mean, Jacob Ben Israel, I'm just saying...
Exactly. It's a competition that we don't want to judge.
He has done wrong to my people. But I guess maybe it's progress that, the worst idiot stereotype in the new fall television season is not in the gay community. It's a rung up from bottom. We are, in the race. It's
right.
Something.
Well, and let's just focus. We'll give one more beat to I don't know, offensive, but sort of lazy. Ethnic stereotypes in Partners, which really is an abysmal show. There's a very strange Latina secretary. I say strange because the actress is actually very, very likable, and she does a good job of kind of like making it a sort of a meta thing where she, talks. She sort of say, she knows that he wants her to go, yeah, yo, I'm gonna cut you, and so she gives him what he wants, but she also lets a gay man, put his head in her breast. So, I'm not sure that...
Because sexual harassment is fine when gay men do it to women. Totally fine.
Yeah, exactly. And the whole sort of, I'm not sure that, citing West Side Story is... I know that's a very, sort of creaky show, but even in 1995, that was a very... out of date, that's worse than the lesbian stereotypes in the new normal. So I don't know.
It's true.
Okay, no points whatsoever.
I think we need a trans underrepresented groups coalition against stupidity in television. We can be two of the founding members and start today. At least you're going to do stereotypes. They have to be funny.
Exactly. It's all we can ask.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. It's a treat to be able to talk to you, and I appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you for having me.